there's a lot of uncertainty about the Sphere card. So Dana just came out and said that he doesn't know how it's going to perform at this point. He doesn't know if the event is going to be good, but it is something that he just wants to try out at this point. This is what Dana says, quote, does it work? Is it great? Is it awesome? Does it suck? We don't know. We don't know until it's over, but we're going to try it, unquote. The ticket prices have changed dramatically. I mean, the cheapest tickets when the Sphere card at first were like $3,000. Now they're down to like $700 or something like that. The Canelo fight is down the street and it's during Mexican Independence Day, so the UFC card doesn't have a Mexican main eventer. Canelo is the biggest Mexican star in the world, so it's going to be a tough fight regardless. Like for Mexican Independence Day, going up against Canelo like that in the same place, the two events are like right next to each other. So unless they had some kind of superstar like a Conor McGregor or Jorge versus Nate Diaz in the past, or Habib came back or something like that, there's no other fight that's going to make Mexicans want to watch a UFC card more than watching Canelo. That's their guy. He's one of the biggest stars ever, but instead they have O'Malley versus Merab in the main event, which is a very, very good fight, but it doesn't fit the theme. It doesn't fit the Riyadh season thing, which is by Saudi Arabia, and it doesn't really fit the Mexican independence theme either. They have Alexa Grasso though, so that's great. They have a lot of good Mexican talent on this card. Wish they had Brandon Moreno and Yara Rodriguez. That would have been perfect. So Dana doesn't know how it's exactly going to perform, but it should be a really good event for anybody that goes and watches it over there. The Sphere actually looks really cool, like sitting in there, looking at the screen. I think the fight is going to be right there. Everybody's going to watch from the bleachers, but then it might project the fight as if you're like right next to the fights watching it. It should be really cool. Like imagine seeing Sean O'Malley landing a flying knee that close from the screen. It's like you're watching him getting that knockout right in front of you. And I wonder how like the audio system is going to be, because people can like watch movies and stuff in there. So I don't know if they're going to have some kind of audio system where maybe you can hear the strikes better or something like that. I don't know how that's going to work out, but I think Brian Ortega versus Diego Lopez is going to go hard in the Sphere specifically. The war between them two, every blow, the grappling exchanges, all the scrambles, watching that like on the big screen would be insane. Ortega versus Lopez, I think, is going to be the highlight of the card. And I guarantee most of the fans watching there, that's going to be like their best moment from the Sphere. They're going to play movies. Yeah, they're going to play a movie between each fight. That's what Dana said. This is what Dana says, quote, there's a movie that's going to run in the Sphere. There are chapters to this movie, so before each fight is a movie, and you will be focused on the Sphere and the screen. Then the fighters will walk out, then the fight is the star of the show. When that's over, there will be another movie, then a fight. This movie that I'm talking about and these chapters tell a history of combat sports in Mexico. The history of the Mexican people, their traditions. It is what I call the love letter to Mexico. That's pretty cool. There's going to be, I'm guessing, like a 10-minute movie or something like that. I don't know how long these movies are going to be, unless it's like a 10-hour long fight card. I'm expecting these movies to be short, and that could probably explain why there's 10 fights on the card, which is less than usual. Like the usual fight card is 12 to 14 fights. Rarely do you get less, rarely do you get more than that. 10 fights means there's probably more time for these movies between each of them. And I think it could be really cool. It just depends how they pace it and how it's relevant to the fights. Because at the end of the day, like all the visuals and spectacles are cool, but people want to watch fights. That's what's important at the end of the day. If you got a good fight card, it like all the other stuff is just like a appetizer. If the fights perform amazingly, that's what people are going to be talking about more than the actual visuals and spectacles and movies and all that stuff. That's the most important thing when it comes to these cards. And Dana said it's going to show like the Mexican combat sports history or something like that. The important Mexican fighters throughout history. So imagine like the first movie, the greatest Mexican fighter of all time, Juan Hons. Every movie is just John Jones' highlight reel, talking about all his stats, youngest champion ever, pound for pound great, how many title wins, title defenses, gonna fight Stipe Miocic. Like, can you imagine all the movies was just about John Jones? And like shows him wearing a sombrero and stuff, and, like eating tacos. No, but I can imagine like they're gonna show the legendary boxers like Salvador Sanchez and Julio Cesar Chavez, all the greats. But would they show Canelo? If that is the theme, like they're showing all the great Mexican boxers, they would have to show Canelo. And it's funny because Canelo is fighting and competing with their event, but he is one of the most important Mexican fighters ever. So it would be kind of disingenuous if the theme is to show all the legendary Mexican fighters and they don't show Canelo. But that would be such a power move for Canelo Alvarez. Like he's in both the boxing event and the MMA event at the same time. But I can imagine that they're going to show Brandon Moreno, Yara Rodriguez. I don't know why they're not on this card. Alexa Grasso, maybe Cain Velasquez, and the other Mexican-American fighters, maybe like the Diaz brothers, even though they don't represent Mexico. They always represent America. If they ever have a flag or represent any country, it's usually the United States. But would they show Tito Ortiz then? If they start showing like Cain Velasquez, would Dana put Tito Ortiz on screen? Because he used to rep Mexico. He used to always put up the flag, both American and Mexican flag, and he is Mexican. He was a very important fighter for light heavyweight and the history of the UFC, if we're going to be honest. Like, he was a pretty big star in the beginning with the rivalry with Chuck Liddell, Randy Couture, all that stuff. That was huge back in the day. So even though a lot of people don't like Tito, he is kind of important in that way. So maybe they could just like show the funny moments of Tito Ortiz, some of his legendary quotes. Tito's hilarious, man. If you just look at him as like a comedic character. Now, for the people that aren't at the arena, does the movie play for everybody else too? Or just for the Sphere? Like, they should be able to play it in general for everybody to watch. Maybe that's the selling point. You know, you don't get to watch the movies unless you are at the Sphere. And I was wondering why Alexa Grasso cannot sell out an event herself. I know it sounds like a crazy question, but she's the only Mexican champion. She's the first ever female Mexican champion. Her last fight was on a fight night card, and she's probably never going to have a bigger fight than going up against Shevchenko, right? Because it is a Mexican independence themed event. They have a Mexican champion, but we know that Grasso's probably not going to be able to sell out the card herself. Is it that the Mexican audience just doesn't care about MMA as much, right? They're way more into boxing. And even though some people don't like to hear it, a female champion being attractive is important. It's superficial, right? It is something that shouldn't be important in MMA, but it is. People who are more attractive are going to get more publicity and have more star power and stuff like that. And I think that's way bigger for the female fighters. And Alexa Grasso is not unattractive or anything like that. So Zhang Weili's pretty big. She's kind of famous. We had Ronda Rousey. Joanna was decently popular as well. But I think it actually expands further than just Alexa Grasso. I think just women's MMA right now is not as big as it used to be. Would Grasso have been a bigger star like 7 years ago if she was champion? Or do the Mexican audience not care that much? I don't know. Now, here's the thing. A lot of boxing fans think that the UFC's ticket prices decreased because they were going up against Canelo. Maybe that's part of it, but I think the cheapest seats being $3,000 is crazy. No matter who's fighting. The only fight that can get people to fill out an arena where the cheapest seats are $3,000 is if somehow Muhammad Ali and Bruce Lee came back to fight each other. Like, there's no other fight that's going to have people pay $3,000 at least to watch that fight. Like, they could bring Conor McGregor to fight Khabib again. It's going to be very hard to sell an arena like that. And they're doing it in Vegas. The cost of living in Vegas is not as high as like New York, these other places where maybe higher ticket prices for seats can be a little bit more expensive. But now that some seats are at $700, I'm pretty sure the arena is going to be full now. You know, I think people will watch at the Sphere for $700. Why did this guy put a picture of Tank Davis? What does Tank have to do with this event? This guy says, what is there to humble? In the end of the day, boxing is a super boring and limited sport, while MMA is fun and fast. Gervonta is fun to watch, but sadly, not many boxers are like him. I disagree with that. The only part I agree is that it is a limited sport, but boxing has been performing much better than MMA this year. And Tank Davis, he is one of the most exciting boxers to watch. But then there's also Terrence Crawford, you know, Alexander Usyk, Fury, Joshua, all the big stars, you know, even Canelo, Dimitri Bivol, all of them are so good to watch. Boxing is in a very, very good state right now. But I do think it's going to be a good one. I think the event is going to be really fun for anybody attending it. And if any of you guys are, make sure to leave in the comments below your experience going to this event. And don't ever forget, guys, there's not a single fighter that could beat John Jones in a room ever. And the event is all about John Jones. Don't ever forget that.